Hey everyone, just want to take a few minutes in this video to give you an overview of the course project that you will be working on throughout the term. It comes in stages, so I don't want you to feel super overwhelmed right now. Again, this is just an overview so that you have an idea of what the end goal is, basically, because you do start working on it in week 1, but then you don't in weeks 2 and 3. So it's in stages throughout the term, but I know that most students would like to at least have some idea of what it's all about, what each part will consist of, and again, what that end goal will be. All right, so I'm going to share my screen here real quick, and we are going to look at the course project overview together. Okay, so essentially you're going to be writing a research paper. That's really what it is. Everything that we're going to be learning throughout the term, how to basic essay writing skills, the elements of essay writing that you need to know, whether it's a research paper or not, right? So introductory paragraphs and thesis statements, body paragraphs, transitions, coherence, concluding paragraphs. So there's that element. And then we are going to add in what to do when it is a research paper. So how to narrow your focus, how to find sources, how to make sure that you are incorporating enough of your own ideas while also using effective material from your sources, how to cite it correctly, how to do a reference page correctly, how to put the whole thing in APA format, right? We're going to be learning all of that throughout the term. It will culminate in a research paper that's, I'm going to say 3 to 4 pages in length. That's not including the title page or the reference page. That's 3 to 4 pages of actual essay from your introductory paragraph through your conclusion. All right, I'm not a stickler for, oh, if you don't have exactly this many pages, you're going to get a bad grade. It's really more, because every topic is a little different. How each of you approaches it will be a little different. So I can't say that it has to be this many pages exactly. As long as you are developing your ideas fully, explaining them fully, then you should be fine, right? So I think a good sort of ballpark figure is 3 to 4 pages of actual essay, typed and double spaced. You will need a minimum of 3 sources. So I'd say aim for 3 to 4 sources, 3 at the minimum. If you don't have at least 3 sources used in the essay, you will fail because you have not met the basic requirements of the project. All right. So that's essentially what our end goal is: a 3 to 4 page research paper in APA format that uses at least 3 sources. The course project is worth 50% of your overall grade. It's a big deal. It will be broken down into 4 parts so that you can sort of work on it in stages, and it's not something where I'm like, okay, week 1, you're gonna have to submit a research paper in week 9. And then I don't mention it again until like week 8. We're gonna work on it a little bit at a time so that when we do reach that point where you have to type up a rough draft, you're not completely overwhelmed and having to start from the beginning with even more limited time than what you already have. So I like to go ahead and make it something that we work on, we come back to throughout the term so that it's not so overwhelming at the very end. I mean, it will still be overwhelming, don't get me wrong. It's still going to be a crunch at the end. It always is for every class, right? 10 weeks is really, because it's really only 9 weeks where you get to learn things. That 10th week is the final week. It's only 4 days long. So 9 weeks to cover anything in any class, it's a crunch, right? But hopefully having it broken down into these parts helps somewhat with that, right? You're going to receive separate assignment sheets for each of the parts, right? So it's not like you have to come back to this course project overview every time. So part 1 is, assigned in week 1. There will be an assignment spot for project part 1, and there will be instructions for that part. Same thing for part 2, right? It has its own assignment spot in week 4 with its own set of instructions, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at each of those parts so that you kind of see what we're going to be doing in each one. First thing you need to know is you have to submit all 4 in order to pass the class. That's just, you know, it's worth too much of your grade. So you have to submit each part and you have to get feedback on each part before you can move forward. And that gets explained in each section. So project part 1, which you'll be doing in week 1, is basically choosing your topic and sort of engaging with that topic, generating some initial ideas and thoughts about that topic, right? I'm going to give you a list of topics to choose from. That seems to be helpful for the majority of students because simply choosing a topic can be monstrous, right? It's a big challenge to just make a decision. So I give you 8 topics to choose from. They are all related to healthcare or nursing specifically in some way. Now, if you look at those 8 choices and you really can't, none of them appeal to you, reach out to me. Depending on, you know, what we discuss, it's possible that I could let you choose an alternative topic. I prefer not though, but I really think, you know, there's at least 2 topics on there that almost every nursing student is interested in and has a lot to say about already. And you'll see when you get there. But you'll choose one of those topics in project part 1, and then the first thing you're going to do is you'll free write. Just, you know, so you'll set a timer for 8 to 10 minutes and just type about that topic, what you already know about it, what you already think about it, questions you have about it, right? Just a free write. It's no rules, right? You just get your thoughts down. And then there will be some more directed questions that you'll answer about the topic. All right. And that's pretty much it. Project part 1, I mean, the biggest hurdle is choosing that topic and then, you know, just getting your initial ideas down about it. It'll be assigned in week 1. I will review your submissions during week 2 and offer feedback on the topic you chose and your free write on it and your answers to the questions, and just sort of, you know, see where you're thinking about heading with the topic and any advice that I can give you based on what I've seen students do in the past, sort of the things that work really well with that topic and some of the pitfalls that students have run into with that topic. I will give you some feedback and advice on project part 1. All right. It's worth 25 points and it's basically just graded like a normal assignment. So if you do the whole thing, you'll get full credit. If you leave a part blank, then obviously you're going to get points deducted and you'll have to go back and finish that section and resubmit it to, you know, get those points back. All right. Remember, we have a sort of a special late work policy for the course projects, right? This one actually is pretty much like the normal homework assignments. If you submit it during week 1, obviously you're fine. If you submit it during week 2, you're fine. If you submit it after week 2, you're going to get a 10% reduction in points for every additional week it's late. And remember, these course project parts are worth a significant portion of your overall grade. It falls under that course project grading category, and project part 1 is worth 10% of that 50% of the course project itself. All right, so you want to make sure you're completing it in full and that you're turning it in on time or at least no more than a week late, right? Try to have that in before week 2 ends because you want to get my feedback on it before you start thinking about project part 2, right? Project part 2, you're going to be in between project part 1 and project part 2, you're going to start looking for sources, right? Because project part 2, you're going to have to come up with your working thesis statement, your main points, and your sources, right? So there's one part of project part 2 is going to say, what is your working thesis statement, right? So a thesis statement is that sentence at the end of your introductory paragraph that tells the reader exactly what your focus topic is and what your main points are going to be. So for instance, if you chose what are the causes of nursing burnout, nursing burnout is often caused by, long hours, lack of support, and high acuity patients, something like that, right? That's your thesis statement. That is the focus of your essay. The focus topic is causes of nursing burnout, and your main points are those 3 specific causes that you are then going to look at in the body of the essay. It's a working thesis statement. So as you continue, looking at sources and drafting the essay, it might change, a little bit. You might decide to do a different main point instead of the one you were going to do third, or something like that, right? It's your working thesis statement, so it's not set in stone, but I want you to have something for that part because that will help narrow your focus as you continue working on the project. Instead of being, all over the place, if you can already have your working thesis statement that has those 3 main points that you're pretty sure you're going to be focusing on, then that just helps you stay on track. You don't have to worry about anything else that's out there, right? So the next thing you'll do is list those main points and explain them a little more. And then you're going to list your sources. Remember, you got to have at least 3. You can have more. You want sources that actually help you explain and support your main points. You can have a source that you use in your introduction or in your conclusion, but are those really helping? Are those really helping you support your ideas? You want sources that tackle those main points that you have chosen to focus on. So keep that in mind. When you have those sources, when you get to project part 2, you are going to give an APA reference entry for each source. So not the citation, not what goes in parentheses in the body of the essay, what goes on the references page. So you'll give the reference entry for each source, and underneath each reference entry, you're going to basically just tell me, summarize what that source is about and how you plan to use it. What main point does it go with? What does it say about that main point that makes you want to use that source? Okay, and that's it, right? Project part 2 is assigned in week 4. I will review it and give you feedback during week 5, right? Remember that there are requirements for project part 2 before you can even access it. You can refer back to the syllabus for that. I will also send out reminders during week 3, right? To remind you, hey, week 4 is coming up. You're going to be assigned project part 2. Here's a list of all the things that you'll have to have gone through and submitted in order to access project part 2, right? It's just the lessons basically from weeks 1 through 3, 1 through some of week 4. But once you have access to it in week 4, you'll submit it. I'll review it during week 5. It's graded like a normal homework assignment, meaning if you do it completely, you'll get full points. If you leave anything blank, you'll get points deducted and be asked to complete it and resubmit it. If you submit it during, at the end of week 4 on time, obviously you don't have to worry about late points. If you submit it during week 5, you don't have to worry about late points. If you submit it anytime after week 5, there will be a 10% reduction in points for every additional week it's late. And this one, project part 2, is worth 15% of the 50, right? Once you get my feedback on project part 2, the next step is to start writing the essay. So project part 3 is your rough draft, all right? So you're going to have my feedback from project part 1 and project part 2. You're going to think about the suggestions and the advice that I've given you, and you're going to start typing up your draft. We're going to have a lesson on how to go about drafting a research paper effectively. I will say right now, I think one of the best ways to do it is to write the draft without even thinking about your sources, right? Have the sources, obviously you have to have them for project part 2. Have them, but write the draft without them. And then go back and add in the source material that's going to help you support your ideas. If you write the first draft without any sources being in it, it's all your ideas. And then you add the source material in to help support your ideas. And then you submit the rough draft, right? Just a good way to go about it. I'm going to give you detailed feedback on your rough draft. I spend 2 to 3 hours on each rough draft, right? There will be requirements before you are able to access project part 3. Again, you can refer back to the syllabus. I'll send out reminders during week 5. But it's, again, just going through some of the additional lessons in weeks 4 and 5. Once you have access to project part 3, then you can work on it. Well, I mean, you can be working on your rough draft at any point, but you won't be able to access it and submit it until you've completed those prereqs, those requirements that you need beforehand. Once you do have access to it and you submit it, then I will be reviewing it and giving you that detailed feedback. This one is a little different. You really need to, it'll be assigned in week 6. And there will be additional requirements. So there's the prereqs that you'll have to complete in order to access project part 3. But then there's also going to be a list of requirements on part 3 that you have to have in place before I will even accept it. Okay, meaning like if you don't have all of those requirements in your draft and you submit it anyway, I will look for those things. And if I don't see all of them, I will give you a 0 on project part 3 and tell you to redo it until all of those have been achieved. You'll then resubmit it and I will change the points and give you my feedback. But it's in your best interest to pay attention to those requirements and make sure they're all there before you submit the rough draft the first time. Just saves all of us time and trouble. It's due at the end of week 6, project part 3, your rough draft. If you submit it anytime during week 7, you don't have to worry about late points. If anytime after week 7, there'll be a deduction in points. But I'd really love for you to have it in on time, because during week 7, you will be doing a peer review with your classmates. You'll be assigned a classmate that you will send your rough draft to, and they will do a peer review on it. You'll be receiving a rough draft from one of your classmates, and you'll do a peer review on theirs. This gets explained more in the assignment for the peer review. It does not factor into the course project grade. It's just a normal assignment. But if everybody can have their rough draft turned in on time, it just ensures that everybody is able to do the peer review on time, and that no one's waiting and having to turn their peer review in late because someone turned their rough draft in late. Right? So again, that rough draft project part 3 is going to be due at the end of week 6. You technically have all of week 7 before any late points would be deducted. But if you could have it in by the middle of week 7 at least, that would at least be helpful to everyone in order to do that peer review. Right? Project part 3 is worth 25 points. And again, that's, if you submit it with all of those requirements in place, you'll get the 25 points and my detailed feedback. If you submit it without any of those requirements in place, you'll get a 0 at first, and you'll be told to redo it. Once you redo it and resubmit it, assuming that you do have all the requirements in place now, you'll get the 25 points and my feedback. It's worth 15% of that 50 that the course project is worth. But I want you to keep in mind that just because you get a 25 out of 25 on the rough draft does not mean that your draft was good and ready to be submitted as a final draft. It just means you did it. You submitted a rough draft with all of the requirements. I don't put pressure on that rough draft in terms of the grade because it's just a draft. So it's possible that you could turn in your rough draft with all the requirements and get a 25 out of 25, but still need to put in a lot of work on revisions in order to score well on the final draft, right? So don't let that 25 out of 25 give you a false sense of security. You got to look at my feedback and see what needs to be done to get the essay up to where it needs to be. Okay. And then of course, project part 4 is the final draft. So you'll take my feedback on your rough draft, possibly your classmates' feedback on the rough draft from the peer review assignment, and you will make revisions. And we are not talking about just fixing, sentence errors. We're not looking at commas and run-on sentences. We're looking at big issues first, right? First of all, is it in APA format? Did you cite your sources? Did you have a references page? Did you use at least 3 sources? Because if you don't have those things, you're automatically going to fail. But assuming that you did what you were supposed to do with project part 3, you won't be running that risk. Those list of requirements that I'm going to be looking for on project part 3 is, have you used at least 3 sources? Do you cite those sources? Do you have a references page? Now, maybe you didn't cite them right. Maybe you don't have the right information in the parentheses. Maybe the reference entries aren't totally correct, but are they there? If so, on project part 3, then you're less likely to run into those issues on project part 4 where you would just automatically fail. Instead, I'm going to be able to help you with looking at your actual essay, your ideas, how you've explained things, how you've organized things. And yes, did you get the citations totally correct? Are your reference entries totally correct? Right? And then you'll take that advice, make the changes, submit the final draft, and hopefully score well with the rubric that I use. Project part 4, there's no additional there's one prerequisite, I believe, which is to watch the revision lesson, the lesson on revisions. I believe so, but not nearly as extensive as some of the other project parts. It'll get assigned in week 8, project part 4 will. It will be due the Wednesday of week 9. You need to pay attention to these deadlines here. Project part 4 is due the Wednesday of week 9. If you have it turned in by the Friday of week 9, I will count it as if it was on time. A 2-day grace period for this one, not a whole week, a 2-day grace period. For every additional day it is late, there is a 10% reduction in points. I won't accept it past the Monday of week 10. So if you turn it in Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday of week 9, you have a chance of scoring 100 out of 100 on it. Don't know if you will, but you have a chance of scoring 100 out of 100. If you submit it on the Saturday of week 9, the highest you could possibly get is a 90 out of 100, and that's it, it's perfect. If you submit it the Sunday of week 9, the highest you can get is an 80 out of 100. If you submit it Monday, the highest of week 10, the highest you can get is a 70 out of 100. And again, that's if it's perfect. And then after the Monday of week 10, I won't accept it, and you'll get a 0, and you will probably fail the class. All right. So it is important, and don't worry, I will be sending out plenty of reminders about all of this, right? So every time we get close to a project part, I will be sending out a reminder, hey, don't forget, project part whatever is coming up next week. Here are the lessons and submit items that you need to have gone through and submitted in order to have access to it. don't forget the grace period is almost up. If you haven't submitted this project part yet, you need to do so by Sunday or you're gonna get points taken off. I will send out reminders along the way, but I just want you to keep that in mind from the start, that tight deadline for project part 4 at the end of the term. Okay. All right. So I hope that gives you a better understanding of how it's broken up into parts and why it's broken up into parts and how each part leads to the next. Please keep in mind that whatever topic you choose in project part 1, that is the topic you are working on throughout the whole course project, right? So if you chose what is art therapy and how does it work, that's the topic you're going to use for project part 2. That's the topic you're going to write your rough draft on, and that's the topic you're going to write your final draft on. It's from start to finish, the topic you choose in project part 1. I've had some students who have needed to change topics for various reasons. And obviously, the earlier you figure that out, the better. It's really not fun to have already done a rough draft and found your sources and done projects part 1, 2, and 3, and then figure out you probably need to pick a different topic. That's rough. That's really rough. So try to choose a topic that you're really interested in, that you already have a lot to say about, that you already are interested in. You may not know everything about it, but that you already know something about. And that's the one you're going to be working with. Again, a lot of this will be explained in much more detail with each project part, but on the assignment sheets. If you are feeling super anxious and nervous and have pressing immediate questions, reach out to me. Otherwise, I'd say just wait, and as each project part comes, it will all start to make sense, and it will be a little easier to sort of wrap your head around. Okay. All right, so I'm going to stop there, and again, reach out if you have questions. Otherwise, you guys are free to move on to the next thing.